All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Of course, I'm here live in Sedona, Arizona, in the middle of the vortex, and it's great. And I'm delighted to be here. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this wonderful Monday evening. And it is, what is the date today? It is, I don't know what the date is. It's like, what is it? April 13th, the day after Easter, 2020. We're about a solid month into the economic and health crisis that is ongoing globally, the most draconian measures ever put down on this mass of people. Over 3 billion people are in some form of lockdown. People are going a little stir crazy. There is a moving goalposts, if you will, about the virus and its implications for health people. There is everything from this is a total conspiracy manufactured by nefarious people for some sort of political or economic gain, to this is a weapon launched by China, to this is a deep state move, and right, and everything between, or it's just an accidental crisis pandemic that happens much like the Spanish flu. Well, I don't know what part of that is true. I don't know what part is false. And I think if you and I were both honest with ourselves, really radically honest, we're all kind of grasping at straws. And a lot of people are spending a lot of time on their social media and their Facebook in consumption mode. Make a note of that. How much are you consuming in media right now? Make a note of that. Write that question down. I'm going to come back to that later because it's going to lead back to what I was talking about in the email, which I'm sure there's lots of people freaking out because I said, basically, what is the one thing that both Donald Trump and Mahatma Gandhi have in common? And people are like, wait, you've lost your mind. Mahatma Gandhi was a celebrated spiritual leader who basically challenged British colonialism, which at that time had dominated the world for the last couple hundred years. Pound sterling was the de facto currency of the world, and the sun never set on the British Empire. And Mahatma Gandhi was a trained lawyer who took up the cause against basically against creating a free India from British colonialism. And he started the peace movement to resist tyranny and to create a new prosperous world for what we now call India. And he was an extremely controversial figure. He was attacked mercilessly in the press. There was a considerable amount of, they were considered combative and offensive to the governing bodies. He suggested peaceful resistance to stupid rules and stupid ideas that were not good for people. And he challenged authority, the status quo, and to move beyond racial and religious segregation, or what we would call today a version of identity politics, because at the time the Indian people were seen as less than, or colored people, or that sort of stuff. And of course his movement then transferred over to Martin Luther King, who launched an incredible movement in the United States not that long after, and those principles have stayed around the world for a long time. Now, Donald Trump, I would say, is a different character. He's grew up in a wealthy family. Gandhi was not that poor. He was well educated and came from better stock than most people had, or had better opportunities. His opportunities to education was certainly better than the average. He also came up during a major crisis. So you have to realize that, Gandhi's rise happened in between the two wars. And then, of course, he got the freedom for Gandhi afterwards. In that case, they were dealing with the British Empire, which had an economic tyranny. In Trump's dealing with the China Empire, which has a form of economic tyranny. In other words, it's taking advantage of its citizens for a mighty few. And he uses combative and offensive language. He's resistant to what he feels is stupid rules, and there's challenging authority, status quo, and moving beyond segregation. So against identity politics. So not exactly the same, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. Of course, Trump being, real out there, and of course, this big kind of strapping blonde guy, and Gandhi being this tiny weak guy. So the physical form is interesting, but the actual figure is similar in a lot of ways. Now a lot of people, though, would say that how could you possibly compare these two? And a lot of people mistake, if you've read my Experiments in Truth, and both were flawed characters. If you read Gandhi's my Experiments of Truth, he shamelessly reports some rather reprehensible personal characteristics that he was working to overcome. And in today's world, all of the characteristics of the current president of the United States is that way as well. Now, if your blood is boiling and you're freaking out because I'm talking about Donald Trump and I'm talking about Gandhi, please get beyond that. Like, let's be adults, because what we're really trying to do is come to a fruition of how do you overcome economic uncertainty in the crisis. Because whatever you want to look at is that things are really tough for an incredible amount of people. And I'm going to share what the interesting component was. I think 27% of businesses today have about 13 days of cash flow in order to survive. And about 75% have less than 30 days cash flow in order to survive. And about 67% of the population works for a small business. And the average, I think 47% of the families in the United States today, Canada is very similar, then those families do not have $500 for an economic crash. And here we are, a month in, the stimulus packages, which they have their own consequences in order to deal with the economic fallout. I don't know what the situation is with the health thing. I don't know if this is part of an attack. There's a lot of people that think it is, or that it's a black swan event that people are taking advantage for various political, economic, military, information reasons as we move into a new world. But as I talked about in a webinar recently, it's all part of Full City's Trap, which was written about the Peloponnesian Wars. Basically, in the last 500 years, there's been 16 different occasions where there was a rising power challenging the dominant power. And on 12 of those occasions, it came out to be a war. The last time that happened was literally when the British Empire was challenged by the German Empire, and the British had to create an alignment with the communists in Russia and the United States in order to take over imperialism in Japan, which had aligned with fascism in Germany. After the war won, there was Churchill had to make a deal with the United States to make the industrial capacity, to leverage the industrial capacity of the United States to overcome the German productive capacity. And when America came into the war in 1942, that economic stuff was allowed the Allies in order to claim victory over the Axis powers. And part of the deal was, though, that the United States then got all the bases around the world that the British Empire had to give up, that they controlled the world for the last 200 years. And so we had a transfer to the United States, that became the de facto dollar, and shipping lanes opened up and products started moving all around the world. And that created a ginormous economic boom where the United States rose to be the most dominant nation of the world, and then became like a little bit like the British Empire. Well, Also, because India kind of aligned with the British Empire, and the British Empire was weakened significantly from that, that allowed India to regain its freedom. And that happened on, in India, which was under the control for Britain from a long time. The wall came up in Eastern Europe. And so Europe was divided into the communist nations, and then the industrialized economies was on the other side of Europe, which they called, this was the Iron Curtain. And that set in motion the Cold War, which went on for many decades until another alignment between Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and Mikhail Gorbachev came together after the Soviets realized that they could not win an arms race because of economic production industrialization. But during that time, China again rose to power. Keep in mind, China is an empire that has existed for 6,000 years, far longer than any other culture. And it's, now in an expansion phase and challenging the United States for economic supremacy worldwide, as evidenced by its practices and entering into the World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, by producing a lot of the technology and a lot of the products. And so we went through an we moved the industrial production of the United States over to China because that made sense for the people on Wall Street and in London, who were taking advantage of low-cost production to get better margins, which leveraged into PE ratios, which leveraged into the rise of the stock market to such level, and derivatives markets and currency exchanges. And then the world got more connected than it ever has. Now, what's fascinating, if you look back historically, when did we experience the last, and I'm getting to the point here in a minute, just follow me, because we need to if you're going to play the game of winning an economic war, you need to understand how the chessboard is set up. And I'm compressing hundreds of years to just get this down so that you can understand this and why this impacts you, because then you're going to see the connection between Gandhi's policies and Trump's policies, or proposed policies, on how we get out of that. And so, and it doesn't matter, in my opinion, who the president is or who the prime minister is. It doesn't matter. The principle is all that matters, because at the end of the day, you and me, we're low on the information and we're low on the levers of power or levels of influence. We're just people here trying to make our lives, trying to run a business, trying to support our families. So let's just get past the political stuff, because that's not going to help us right now. That's not going to put food on your table. That's not going to allow prosperity into your life. That's not going to bring health into your life. You are responsible for creating prosperity and health in your life. That's why we call this the Prosperity and Health Alliance, and that's why I do these things. So during this horrible time, now keep in mind, the British Empire had enslaved the Chinese nation for tea by getting its population drugged on opiates. And interesting enough, China produces opiates and has the United States, 50,000 people or so dying from opiate drug addiction in the United States. So it's kind of like the reverse opium war going on right now. But China rose out of relative poverty from the 1970s because of this idea that Kissinger and those guys said that we needed to align with the rising power and make a peaceful transfer, and turn it into an industrial powerhouse with the monies from the Western industrialized worlds. And so that made a few people very, very wealthy, very, very influential people wealthy. But for people like my parents, who, like my dad at that time in the 70s, worked for Ford Motor Company, which was a high paying, production job. And he made a great life. And, that changed in the 70s. And we saw, then of course, they went off the gold standard, and we saw a decline of your buying power, and we saw a rise in kind of the stock market, and we went through all these economic crises and everything. So you get the idea of what's happening. And for us who grew up in those things, and there was the yuppies, And, the baby boomers came in and they just bought and credit. And so you now owning your own home and everything soared in price and dollars. And we started leveraging ourselves more and buying and own things. And then we've had these, super debts that are keep going and keep rising and going, and people keep writing the check. And all of a sudden, here we are in 2020. Most of the things that you get are connected or come through a supply chain that's produced in China. Most of the service industry is now happening through the North American economies. So we do accounting and legal and television and entertainment and financial markets and all these sort of things. We don't make things like we used to. And what was interesting about that is Gandhi noticed back when he was trying to rally the Indian people to go up against British oppression, that in order for the Indian population, what was happening is India was sending all the riches of India. Before that, India was one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Okay. And it had resisted the attacks of all kinds of other nations. It's a very, very, very old country as well. It wasn't really called India. It was called Bharat. And it's a collection of, it's a very mosh pit of humanity. It's a very interesting country. I've been there several times, and I really enjoy the Indian culture. But it's the largest democracy in the world right now, the Indian culture. And so at that time, they were exporting all their stuff. All their stuff was going to all their materials and everything were going off to Britain, which didn't have enough raw materials, very much like China, didn't have enough raw materials. So they had to take all their raw materials from around the world and produce them. And so what China has gone on is they've copied basically the, East India Company, and it became a mercantile regime under very much like a tyranny monarchy under their rule. So it's kind of a fusion of Confucianism, communism, and the emperor culture that existed for thousands of years in the culture. I'm not trying to make it wrong or right, and you have to get beyond wrong or right. They got that model. And then the British monarchy was a monarchy that had a democracy kind of attached to it, but the average person didn't have the economic wherewithal, and certainly didn't in India. And so what Gandhi proposed was peaceful resistance to the tyranny that was going on, but he also made something else, and it's immortalized on the British flag, and that is the spinning wheel. So what he started was an economic revolution, is that you can make your own clothes and you can produce. And the way for the culture to gain prosperity and to gain power and to gain influence and to make a better life in your home and in your community and for your country as a life is to embrace the tenets of capitalism in not crony capitalism, which is what's kind of warped today inside of America or the industrialized nations, but actual personal capitalism. And what is the foundation of it? You produce more than you consume. And Donald Trump has come up with this idea: we need to bring our factories back. We need to get our workers going. We need to produce things. We need to build things. He used to build, big hotels and apartment buildings. So he's a classic old school industrialist. Build things, produce things, sell things, right? He sells everything from wine to steaks to restaurants. He's always selling. He's making stuff and he's selling it. Okay. Now, Gandhi said the same thing. We need to take the spinning wheel. We need to make our own clothes, make our own silks, and we need to sell them. And even today, when you go to India, fantastic. I went to India and bought beautiful custom suits, like that you would go in and pay $5,000 or $10,000 for. You can get them for a few $100 in India because they produce it there. They get it there. I got a guy makes it. They sell it. They pick the same cloth that they sell to somewhere else that they sell for 10 times the markup. And guess what? They put me in the suit, they measure the suit, they make the suit, they make the shirts. So I got a whole bunch of stuff from India because of that. I've experienced this directly. They're happy, I'm happy. I get it at a much less price than I would if I go somewhere else. So it pays for the trip. You go there, you get highly recommended. If you want to know about it, I can give you the name of my tailor over there. So all that to say the founding, the similarities between Trump's message and Gandhi's message is to produce more than you consume and take control of your life by running a business in your own home. That's essentially the message where they're similar. Now, if you looked at the persons, Gandhi and Trump, you probably couldn't get two people that were more polar in their look, in their attitude, in the way they communicate, their lifestyle. You know, Gandhi was, you know, a renunciant. He's living on a little hovel, wearing a little dhoti and doing a spinning wheel and fasting every day. Donald Trump's, you know, was living in, you know, the top of Trump Tower, and, you know, his toilet is made of gold. So it's fascinating to me that, and I've studied a lot of historical figures and a lot of historical things, and I've really compressed a lot. And I know some people are going to say, hey, but you missed this. But the bottom line is, here we are today in this major situation in world history, and we've got the combination of an economic war, an information war, a technological war that's going on, and frankly, an ideological war between two competing ideologies: the industrial democracy, democratic democracies of the world, and the socialist, pseudo fascist communist state, because the government controls everything over there. And we believe in personal freedom. They believe in order. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's the take. So what's happened because of the coronavirus, it's exposed some weaknesses in the system. It exposed a supply chain system. We are dependent on 95% of the prescription drugs in the United States are made in other countries. Many of the supply chains for essential components, including military components, are made outside of the country. That's a big problem. The technology that, you know, was coming in, of course, this all started when, remember, the whole Huawei thing, is that with 5G coming in and the technology that 5G is bringing to the world, well, that has been, I think there's 70 plus countries worldwide who are running this on Huawei, which is a form of ZTE, which is with China, to control information. And if you've read, if you've read the books Sapiens and Homo Deus by Noah Yuval Harari, which talks about the world in 21 lessons for the 21st century, is that information technology, artificial intelligence, and biological biotech are the areas of dominance. So traditionally wars were fought by, you know, first it was spears and swords and arrows and castles and things like that. And then it moved into, you know, guns and tanks. And then it went into like planes and missiles and nuclear weapons. And so those wars have become so sophisticated and so devastating that people don't want to get into a ballistic war any now. So then now they need to go into a different type of war. So we're in the middle of a war. We're in a war. And then on top of that, we have an economic crisis, which often leads to world wars, which always start with a trade war. If you look at that, historical aspects of the rising power and the descending power. And so now we have what was the start of a trade war that is now full-blown into an economic war, which is now full-blown into, there's a biological crisis that the world hasn't seen since the Spanish influenza. And now the problem is, now back then the world wasn't as interconnected. Now the whole world is very interconnected. So viruses can spread easier thanks to planes and boats and the intertransport. The information can spread. All of the economic markets are tied. So when things went bad in the States in the 1930s, it didn't necessarily have an impact in some of the other parts of the world. Now a crisis in one area has an impact everywhere else. So we're in this world of super interconnectedness, but we have a clash of ideologies. Now, the foundational component of this, and we're pawns on the chessboard. You have to understand that we're at the very bottom of the rung here. And the reality is we're not going to be able to influence a lot of the big decisions other than what we support both personally and professionally. I myself believe in industrialized capitalism, and I believe in democracy. I don't believe I believe in equal opportunities, not equal outcomes. And we have some problems in education. We don't have equal education for people anymore, and that does not create equal opportunities. If you want to get into that, I would suggest listening to Valuetainment's interview with Ray Dalio, who goes into the depths of the economic component that we're facing, as well as the educational crisis that we're facing. And that's the beauty of why we have these, because as a personal business owner, and it's never been easier to own a personal business. So if you're into, like, you can associate the beauty of being in a network marketing or an MLM company or an affiliate marketing or something like that, which is so popular in today's world, is that you can leverage a business that has millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure built that you do not have to pay for, that you just need to get out and be able to promote and sell and advocate a product to as many people as possible, so that you are producing more value than consumed. So you get aligned with a product like Enagic, like a water machine, or, you know, like my other company, Bioptimizes, the health products, which are pretty hot right now with everybody's health crisis. And you promote that product, you promote that service because it adds value to people. It improves their health, it improves their finances, it improves their home's life, it saves the environment. Those are the things that if you look at the Enagic business, I'm going to go into Enagic on this and why this is so important for you right now. Here's the thing. You've got 45 years of distribution channels built in place. We build, we produce, we service, and we share these products around the world, and that's been put together for 45 years. Okay, they handle all the taxes, the shipping, they handle the manufacturing, they handle the service and all that sort of stuff. Literally, you have hundreds of millions of dollars in 45 years when you're involved with that. On top of that, you produce a water machine. What's it do? It reduces the use of plastic bottles, which is an environmental benefit. It's not looking for some government official who may be influenced by some other specialty groups to do something. You're doing something in your own home. You're getting plastic out of your lives, and you're producing clean, healthy drinking water for yourself. And you're producing an incredible level of electrical-based antioxidants, which has been proven by Dr. Horst Filzer in a completely defendable trial in human studies, that this actually works as an antioxidant inside the body and improves energy in the cell. That's from Dr. Horst Filzer and his scientific discoveries. You can go on the video where he actually shares those statements. Those aren't claims, those are statements that are out there. Then there's an economic piece that comes with this that allows you, just like what Gandhi advocated in India way back in the 30s and 40s, is to start producing more. Your Kangen water machine is like a spinning wheel back in those times. In those times, it was textiles and clothing and the production of that. And by creating a cottage industry in each little home, then you could then bring more value and more prosperity. And when you have the self-respect and prosperity inside your own house, you can go out and share that with other people. You can give more in your community. You can create more value. You're basically creating an industrial cottage industry right here in your own home. And we have that opportunity. And it's an alignment with democratic capitalism, which was what has created more prosperity in world history than ever before. And that's been proven by all sorts of independent studies, regardless of everything else. Conversely, the crisis is creating, we now need a socialistic response by, we need to take care of all the suffering people, because of reality is crony capitalism and these ridiculous things that the financial industry did, which was exacerbated in 2008 when we went through that crisis. We went from a balance of 800 billion on the thing to like 4 trillion basically overnight in a very short period of time. And the bottom line is the Joe and Mo America, they didn't get the payoff that was in the people who were creating the problem. And we're right back to that situation again. And so I do believe that making sure we take care of people who are on the lowest economic part of the scale or the most at risk is very, very important. In fact, we could do a better job of that, particularly with particularly with the aspects of, you have poor education, the likelihood for criminality and drug addiction increase exponentially. And the cost of keeping someone incarcerated is way less than keeping, hundreds of people educated. So we need a new version. We need a better education system. But guess what? The education system today available to you is the best education system that ever was. This internet, what you and I are looking through, is now allows you to take classes at the greatest institutions in the world, to learn from the smartest people on the planet on any single topic for next to nothing, a fraction of the cost. You are able to leverage hundreds of millions of dollars in business know-how and structure that you could never do before. This technology that we're talking on with Zoom and Facebook, think of the billions and billions of dollars, and think of all the technology that built the internet, and think of all the technology that built a company like Enagic, and think of all of the technology that built the phone lines and the internet lines and the trucking lines and all of this. And you could just go on and on and on, and you can learn from the greatest sales masters in the world, the greatest business people. I mean, I'm listening to Ray Dalio. He's got a $125 billion fund. You can't get into his fund, and I can go online for free and listen to him, tell him, shape those ideas for me. I can watch a video of Martin Luther King when he starts talking about people not being judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. How many people are shaming other people because of their color or their race? How many other people are aligning with the political movement because of color or race? How many people are playing victim instead of deciding to be victor? The bottom line is we can't change the major things that have shaped our life right now. And being a victim right now is a very dangerous thing. Yes, bad things happen to humans, and there's a bad thing happening on the world. But you know what? If you're going to get your way out of it, you need to reject your victim application. It's denied. I was listening to Elle Russ, I had her on my podcast. It's going to be out really soon on the Awesome Health podcast. And she was talking about that, how to be confident as, as frig or whatever you want to say. I won't use that because we're not swearing on our line. So she wrote in that book, right now we've made being a victim some sort of value. And there's no way that goes. Were the Indian people repressed at the time? Yes. And he said, you can't be a victim. Stand up and resist being a victim and actually go out and produce more than consume, and your life will get better. And it did. And it did. We're dealing with the president that is dealing with one of the most challenging situations in the world. Regardless of your political process, he's in a very difficult spot. He's got to make decisions, and whatever he chooses, he's going to be attacked. Whether people live, people die, whether he opens the economy, if he closes the economy, it's going to cost trillions of dollars of cost. If he opens the economy, it could cost hundreds of thousands of more lives. How do you win in that decision? How do you put a price on people's lives? How do you understand all the consequences? We can't. None of us can. And thank God you and I don't have to make that decision. You and I have only one decision to make, and that is whether we're going to be a victim or whether we are going to be a victor, whether we're going to produce more than we consume. Are you taking, and this goes back to what I was talking about on this phone. If you're on this phone all the time and you're consuming conspiracy theories and you're consuming videos and you're consuming entertainment and you're texting back and forth to your friends and you're not producing anything, you have to look at how much am I consuming? How am I watching, listening, taking in? And then with that information, am I listening? Am I consuming 4, 5, 6, 7 hours? And then what am I producing? How many videos am I producing in my life? How many sales training to level up my skills am I taking? How am I looking at how do I manage my taxes? How do I manage the crisis situation? Where are the areas that I need to take ownership of my life? Where are the areas that I need to look? How do I balance the budget? How do I cut the expenses so I can extend and give myself the best chance of survival? What things can I liquidate in my life that allow me to start my own business or to grow my own business or to invest in growing and marketing? How many people have I called this week to find out about how they're doing and what their options are and presented them with an option? How many videos did I make that I needed to build for my website or for my thing that was attracting people to say, hey, we've got a mission, we've got a vibe, we've got something going on here. We can make a difference in this world. How much are you doing that? Be radically honest. You need to take a balance sheet and look at yourself and seeing how much am I consuming? Am I consuming Netflix? Am I consuming Facebook? Am I consuming social media? And there's good consumption and there's bad consumption. It's like there's good debt and bad debt. you know, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about debt that allows, if you're borrowing, let's say, money for an apartment complex that's going to create more prosperity for you and provide housing for people, that's probably a good debt. If you're borrowing to get a brand new shiny $150,000 car that you really can't afford, that's bad debt. So debt's not a problem. It's what kind of debt. It's consumption's not a problem. If I'm consuming, let's say I'm consuming in a sales training, let's say I'm consuming a tax strategy advising thing. Maybe I'm consuming a personal development. Maybe I'm consuming a coaching course that I need to learn. But conversely, you need to balance that with production. You need to produce more than you consume. So how are you doing that? Are you putting stuff up that you could sell, that you can get some cash in your thing? Maybe you're thinking of starting a business and you want to get going on that. Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you liquidate some of the garbage that you have or some of the stuff that's been sitting in the garage, get some cash for it and go out there and use that to promote your business, you know, or use that to buy the courses that you need to get your skills. And it's interesting. I'm talking to all kinds of people. I talk to 2, 3, 4 people, personal friends around the world every single day. And it's interesting that all the people who have that idea of producing more than they consume, the foundational component that creates prosperity in the world is, guess what? They're all crushing it. They're studying, they're promoting, they're making videos, they're doing work, they're doing that stuff. They are not on social media trying to figure out, is this, an alien attack, or is this is this viral get-in, or is this a conspiracy by the deep state, or is this a work? They're not doing that. And I'm not saying to be ignorant to those things. I do believe a bit of consumption to keep informed to help anxiety, but an overconsumption of that is very different. So if you're consuming 5 hours, right, you need to be producing 10. If you're consuming 10 hours, you need to be producing 20. If you're taking in 30, 40, because guess what? Here's the reality of the economics. We're going to lose a lot of businesses. The job that you were going to on your day job, that might be over. There's a good chance they're not going to make it based on the actual financial numbers. Running a business, look, there's a lot of glamour that's associated with it. A lot of people think that if you open up a business, a restaurant, a business or whatever, that you're making money. 95% of those fail, okay? So it's incredibly risky. It takes an incredible amount of determination, and most of those businesses don't make it. I would say about 2% become really great companies that produce a lot of value for its owners. 98% fail, because 95% fail, and the other 3%, it's kind of a miserable existence where the people just go and people think they're doing well because they own a restaurant or they own this thing. But the reality is it's a struggle from start to finish. The one thing that they take back from it is that they make the decisions in their life that they want to do. For other people, it's better to be an employee. And if you are an employee, what I would say is get involved in a company like Enagic. Get involved in a company that produces value, that's good for your health, it's good for your wealth, it's good for the environment. That's what I love about the Enagic business. It's fantastic for that. Start consuming how to be successful in that business. And if you're listening to this, you're obviously there. And then start producing more value by out there and sharing that message with as many people as possible so that they can take advantage of this massive economic engine that's been built for you. That hasn't changed. The company's still taking orders. The machines are still being built. They're still being shipped around the world. And the checks are going out in those businesses. Business is open. The question is, are you going to sit at home and just blaze through 500 different mini series and brainwash all these Netflix things and all these kind of soap opera shows that have been designed to hook you on the dopamine train? Are you going to spend all your time on social media and Messenger and creating all this stuff, or complaining in these echo chambers about, Trump is bad or the Democrats are good or whatever that sort of stuff is? Are you going to spend all your time doing that? Or are you going to get down, roll up your sleeves, right? Take an honest assessment of what you can do in life. The bottom line is we all have been given the same amount of time every single week, 168 hours, 24 hours a day. How you consume your time, because guess what? The one thing I can tell you right now, you are one day closer to your death, and you are one day closer to the end of this crisis. The thing is, we don't know which days are happening, either one. We don't know how long we're going to live, and we don't know when this crisis is going to end. The only way out in your life, and this will reduce anxiety, this will help you feel better about yourself, this will help you, your community, the environment, the world in general, is to take action and start producing more than you consume. Get it behind this thing, lean into this thing, reach out to your friends, talk to them, talk to everybody, talk to everything, put things up on your social media, do whatever, produce value, share the things that you're learning that's of value. Get away from the politicization, get away from the conspiracy stuff. Get away from all that stuff. That stuff's going to sort itself all out. Resist tyranny, right? Take control of your own personal life and be a leader in your world and take honest accountability for your life. And guess what? Just like the Indians led by Gandhi, so many, many years ago, he's one of my heroes, led them out of tyranny into their own opportunity, their own opportunity prosperity. That doesn't mean everybody gets it. Just because there's an opportunity doesn't mean everybody's going to take it up. And that's a hard lesson. Everybody can go play sports. Not everybody's going to make the pros. Okay? And anybody can go out and run a business or go work for someone else or do nothing if you want. But that was your opportunity with the time you were given. And not everybody's given an equal time, and not everybody has the same amount of time left. So the good news is, whatever time you have left, you can take control of it today, and you can take control of it tomorrow, and you can take control of it for the rest of your life and put the responsibility on yourself, not on anybody else. Don't get into the blame game. This is the cards that we've dealt. And like the great late Kenny Rogers says, every hand is a winner and every hand is a loser. And the best thing that you can hope for is to die in your sleep. That's the gambler. Life is a certainty. It's 100% certain you are going to die at some point. Are you going to live like that all the time? Are you going to live like you're trying to hold on to something? Or are you going to go all in, play the hand that you get, and win in the game of life? I'm encouraging you to do that. You're here. That means that there's a desire in your life to play the game. So play the game well. I'm Wade T. Lightheart from the Prosperity and Health Alliance. If you got any questions, you want to reach out to me, you know where to get me, wadelightheart@gmail.com, on my Facebook page. You can go there into Messenger, and I'll be happy to spend some time with you if you're looking for a way out of this situation. We've got the solution. We've got the plan. We're taking control of it. Take care. Lots of light and love. Wade T.